Hi, my name is Betty. A few weeks ago, I lost my dad after he fought a long and painful battle with his health. Accepting that he is gone has been one of the hardest things I have ever faced. There are moments when I still expect to hear his voice or see him sitting in his favorite chair. Sometimes, I find myself daydreaming that one day he would meet his future grandchildren, hold them in his arms, and smile the way only he could. But then reality hits me, and I know that day will never come. That thought always leaves me with a heavy heart. 7 years ago, when I was 35, I got married. It was one of the happiest days of my life. My dad was there, and he looked so proud of me. On that special day, my dad and I made a promise to each other. We agreed that if I ever had a baby, he would be the very first person I told. It was a small promise, but it meant everything to me. It was our little secret pact, something that made our bond even stronger. Sadly, I never got the chance to keep that promise, and that has become one of my deepest regrets. About a year ago, my dad's health began to decline sharply when he was diagnosed with a serious illness. From that moment on, I made it my mission to be there for him in every way I could. I started visiting my childhood home more often, making sure I spent time with both him and my mom. Many evenings were spent sitting by his hospital bed, holding his hand, sharing quiet moments, and sometimes just sitting together in silence. I also made it a point to call him or video chat as often as I could, even on the busiest of days. But even with all that, there are still times when I ask myself if I did enough. Late at night, I sometimes whisper those questions into the darkness. Did I do enough? Could I have done more? Did he know how much I loved him? Each time those thoughts come, my mom, who has always been my biggest support, reminds me gently that I gave everything I could. Betty, your dad knew how much you loved him. He was proud of you. You did everything you could, she would tell me. Her words helped ease my guilt, even if only a little. One day, as we sat together in the living room, my sister Linda walked in with a man I had never met before. He looked to be in his late 30s, and I assumed he was a lawyer. "This is Richard, the attorney," Linda said, introducing him. My mom quickly offered him a seat, and we all sat down together. Linda, who could never hide her emotions for long, immediately blurted out, "The lawyer said Dad left us a significant inheritance." At that moment, I felt a wave of surprise, sadness, and curiosity wash over me. I could not stop myself from responding to her blunt words. "Linda, you know it's not all yours," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. The whole mood in the room shifted instantly, heavy and tense. Linda and I had never shared an easy bond, but during our dad's illness, things between us grew even worse. I had begged her many times to visit Dad, to sit with him for even a short while, but she refused every single time. Her absence created a wall between us, and every day that she chose not to come made that wall taller and stronger. I was frustrated, but beneath that frustration was love for my father, a desperate desire for him to feel surrounded by family. Looking back, I can admit my words to her that day were harsh, pushed out by the ache in my heart. "You're an adult. There's no need to be so stubborn," I told her, my tone still sharp. She fired back immediately. "I'm not being stubborn. Living in the city and traveling all the way to the countryside isn't as simple as you think. It's just a 5-hour drive," I argued, my voice rising with disbelief. "Those 5 hours aren't only about time, Betty," she snapped. "It costs money too, and money is important to me. I'm busy, so stop nagging me about it." That was the end of that painful conversation. I could not understand how she could reduce our father's last days to the cost of gas and the inconvenience of a drive. To me, it was never about distance or money. It was about love, about showing up for the man who raised us. Her refusal cut deep, and by the time Dad passed away, she still had not visited him once. That choice built an even larger wedge between us, one that I feared would never be repaired. As we sat in the living room that day, the tension grew so heavy that the silence between us felt like another person in the room. My mom's worried eyes moved from me to Linda, and then to the lawyer, who shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Finally, he spoke up, his tone calm and careful. Perhaps it would be best if we all take a moment to breathe and settle down before continuing. I took a slow, deep breath and forced myself to soften. I'm sorry, I said, letting the words hang in the air. My apology eased the atmosphere a little, and Linda leaned back in her chair, though her expression was still tight. The lawyer cleared his throat and began. As I mentioned to you over the phone, I'm here to discuss your father's will. My mom, her face full of confusion, asked, "When was this arranged?" It was about a few weeks before he passed, the lawyer explained gently. Your husband contacted me and asked me to meet him at the hospital. You drafted the will there? At the hospital? Mom asked, clearly surprised. Yes, he confirmed with a small nod. The lawyer spoke gently. Your husband wanted to make sure everything was in order. The will was written in the presence of his main doctor, and it was arranged that the doctor would notify me after his passing. That's why I contacted you now. He reached into his briefcase, pulled out a plain white envelope, and placed it on the table. My heart sank the moment I saw it. The handwriting across the front was so familiar. That's Dad's handwriting, I whispered softly, my throat tightening as I tried to hold back tears. Linda, sitting across from me, crossed her arms and rolled her eyes. Can we just get on with it? I don't have all day, she said impatiently. The lawyer gave a small, polite smile and carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper that listed everything Dad had left behind. The inheritance included our family house, a piece of land, some savings, and something unexpected, a storage shed. Linda's eyes lit up at once. Leaning forward, she asked sharply, Wait, what about the farm? The lawyer blinked in surprise. The farm? Yes, the farm, Linda pressed. Dad used to work on it all the time as a hobby. I jumped in, trying to explain. Dad ran a successful business in town for many years, but when he turned 50, he wanted to slow down. He started spending more of his time working on a small farm near home. It wasn't just a hobby to him. It became part of his life. He even thought about closing his company so he could focus on the farm and his health. This sudden mention of the farm changed the whole mood of the conversation. It added a twist none of us were expecting. For me, it brought back so many memories. During my high school years, I remember Dad often telling me how important it was to slow down, breathe, and truly enjoy life. Linda, who was in college at the time, never agreed with that outlook. She was ambitious and believed that success only came from constant hard work. To her, Dad's decision to step back and enjoy farming seemed like laziness. But Mom and I saw things differently. We were worried about his health and wanted him to live a peaceful life. We supported him completely. I remember one evening when Linda confronted him about it. Dad had put his hand on her shoulder and said, Don't worry about the money, Linda. We've saved enough to take care of everything. Linda gave a hesitant nod that day, though I could tell she still wasn't convinced. Soon after, Dad began closing down parts of his business and devoted himself to farming. There's something deeply satisfying about working with the soil, he would say often, his face glowing with happiness. Watching him out in the fields, planting, digging, and caring for the land, I could see how much peace it brought him. Dad often talked about the joy of growing vegetables and taking care of the soil. Watching him out there in the fields, smiling as he worked, gave me peace. It confirmed for me that we had supported the right choice when he decided to slow down and spend his time farming. But Linda never fully agreed. After graduating from college, she had once promised that she would return home and spend more time with the family. We believed her words, but that never happened. Instead, she stayed near her university, built a career for herself, and eventually married the CEO of a successful IT firm she had met through her job. Her busy life in the city left little time for us. She rarely came back home, and when she did, it was only for a short visit. Now, as we sat together going through Dad's will, Linda became very firm about one thing. She insisted that the farm should be part of the inheritance. Her determination pushed the lawyer to carefully go through the documents again. After some checking, he looked up and said, The farm wasn't actually owned by your father. It was leased land. That can't be right, I said in surprise. All my life, I had assumed Dad owned the land he worked on. Linda's face fell as the truth sank in. It was disappointing for both of us, but at the same time, it felt like a small relief. None of us really knew how to manage a farm, so maybe it was for the best. The lawyer then moved the discussion forward. The house and the land directly surrounding it will go to your mother, he explained clearly. Linda smirked at those words, probably already calculating what might still be left for her. Leaning forward, she asked eagerly, "What about the rest?" "The remaining assets," the lawyer continued, "include your father's savings and a storage shed. These will be divided equally between the three of you." "Savings?" Linda interrupted quickly. "That means cash, right? I'll take that." Her eyes sparkled with excitement at the thought of money. The lawyer nodded calmly. "The total savings amount to approximately $400,000. This sum is not subject to inheritance tax." At that moment, Linda leaned even further forward, her voice loud and confident. "I want the $400,000 in cash," she declared triumphantly, as though the decision had already been made. Her tone and her confidence didn't sit well with me. Something about the way she claimed it made my chest tighten with frustration. I raised my voice slightly and said firmly, "Hold on. I don't agree. Why should you get all the cash?" I asked firmly, unable to stay quiet any longer. "Because I'm the eldest," Linda shot back, as if that reason alone was enough. She waved her hand as though the matter was settled.
"Fine.
"You can have the storage shed." "What's that even worth anyway?" Her dismissive tone annoyed me, but I forced myself to stay calm. The lawyer spoke up, clarifying the details. "The storage shed is located near the farm. Whoever inherits it will own the shed, the small piece of land it stands on, and anything inside." At the mention of extra land, Linda suddenly looked more interested. Even though it was only a tiny patch, I found it strange that someone married to a wealthy CEO would be so focused on grabbing more. "The land attached to the shed is about 75 square feet, roughly the size of a small bedroom," the lawyer explained. He then pulled out a set of photographs and laid them on the table for us to see. The pictures showed the shed in its current condition. The structure looked old and worn down, with weathered wood and a sagging roof. Inside, the photos revealed shelves stacked with basic gardening tools, hoses, scissors, shovels, and a few rusted buckets. Nothing about it seemed valuable in terms of money. Linda's face twisted with disappointment as she flipped through the photographs. "I don't want this," she said sharply, pushing the pictures back toward the lawyer. Her reaction didn't surprise me. The shed and its contents carried sentimental value, but very little financial worth. That was not the kind of inheritance Linda cared about. She waved her hand again and said, "Fine. You take the cash. I don't want anything to do with that rundown shed." Her tone made it clear she wanted to distance herself from what she considered worthless. "Hold on. That doesn't seem fair," I protested.
My voice was louder this time.
Linda had been quick to claim the $400,000 in savings, which was obviously the most valuable part of the inheritance, while leaving me with what she believed was useless junk. Her confidence made me feel cornered, like she was winning a game I didn't even want to play. The tension grew heavier when my mom finally spoke. "As long as Linda doesn't complain later," she said gently, trying to keep the peace. Her words only deepened my unease. To me, it felt as if everyone was overlooking the fact that the division was far from equal. "I don't see any issue with this arrangement. Why would I complain?" Linda said, sounding smug. She was more than happy to take the money and leave me with the old, neglected shed. I couldn't hide my frustration, but before I could argue further, Linda cut me off with a sharp remark. "You care more about Dad than about money, right?" she challenged. Her words caught me off guard and left me momentarily speechless. Of course I valued my father more than money, but the way she dismissed my feelings so easily made me feel small and unimportant. In the end, the inheritance was divided. My mom received the house and the land surrounding it. Linda walked away with all of Dad's savings, signing a document to confirm she wouldn't dispute the division. She even laughed confidently as she signed, her carefree attitude only adding to my frustration. And I was left with the shed, something Linda had mocked and brushed aside as worthless. Later, I couldn't hold my feelings inside any longer. I turned to my mom. "Why didn't you support me?" I asked, my voice filled with hurt. "I did help," she insisted gently. "I made sure you got the shed." "I'm not happy with just the shed," I argued, struggling to see what value it could possibly hold. My mom placed her hand on mine and looked at me with quiet optimism. "You might find something wonderful if you give it a chance," she said. Her words planted a tiny seed of hope in me. Maybe she was right. Maybe the shed held something more than I realized. A few days later, after receiving the key from the lawyer, I decided to visit the shed. It was located near the field, about a peaceful 25-minute walk from our house. The path was overgrown with weeds and grass, winding through the countryside where Dad had once spent his happiest days. The field itself, which Dad had leased until his health declined, now lay empty and untouched. Its stillness gave the whole area a lonely, almost forgotten feeling. When I finally reached the shed, I paused in front of its weathered exterior. The wood was cracked, the paint had long since peeled away, and the roof sagged slightly to one side. For a moment, I hesitated. Then I unlocked the door and pushed it open. The air inside was thick with dust, heavy and stale. Every surface was coated in a fine layer of dirt, and cobwebs stretched across the corners like fragile curtains. I stepped inside and looked around. "Wow, this place hasn't been touched in ages," I muttered to myself. Despite the initial disappointment, I held on to the hope my mom had given me. Maybe, just maybe, there was something inside worth finding. I thought maybe I would find something of Dad's here, a keepsake or even a hidden treasure that could remind me of him. But when I looked around, the shed seemed exactly as it appeared, a plain storage space. Old farming tools were scattered about, shovels leaning against the wall, hoses coiled in piles, and scissors resting on dusty shelves. Nothing stood out as special. "Maybe I should just take what's here for now," I whispered to myself, my eyes scanning the dim, cluttered room. But something about the space didn't feel right. The inside looked smaller than the outside, as if a part of the shed was missing. Am I imagining things? I wondered. To be sure, I stepped outside and walked around the shed. That's when I saw it, something that stopped me cold. At the back, half hidden behind a thick cluster of trees, was another door. Wait, another entrance? I gasped, my heart pounding. From inside, there had been no sign that this door even existed. It was as if the space behind it had been invisible, sealed away from view. A rush of excitement and curiosity surged through me. Could this be one of Dad's secrets? He had always loved surprises. He used to hide gifts for me on my birthdays or plan small adventures that I never saw coming. The memory of those moments made my eyes well up with tears. This discovery felt like another one of his surprises, something he had left just for me to find. Wiping my tears, I went back inside the shed, determined to figure out how to open the hidden door. I searched through the shelves, digging through the old tools, until something caught my attention. Inside the handle of a worn shovel was a small compartment, and tucked neatly inside were 3 tiny keys. My heart began to race. With shaking hands, I grabbed the keys and rushed back to the hidden door. Each step filled me with more hope, more anticipation. Standing before it, I held my breath and slid the first key into the lock.
Click.
The sound was sharp and satisfying. Slowly, the door creaked open, its rusty hinges groaning. Behind it was a cramped hidden space. In the center stood a single large safe, tall and imposing, its metal surface reflecting the faint light. I froze, staring at it. A whirlwind of thoughts rushed through my mind. Is this from Dad's company? I wondered aloud. My chest tightened with a mix of nostalgia and curiosity. The safe seemed more than just an object. It felt like it carried a part of Dad with it, a secret he wanted me to uncover. Maybe even a final message or gift. This wasn't just a safe. It was a treasure hunt, carefully left for me, a last connection to my father's heart. I stepped closer, and recognition washed over me. This was the same safe that once sat in the corner of Dad's office. I remembered it so clearly from my childhood. I could almost hear his voice and picture him sitting at his desk, focused on his work. The connection was immediate and emotional, filling me with a wave of nostalgia. Finding this safe felt important, almost as if Dad had planned it. But knowing him, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. There has to be more, I whispered to myself as I slid the second key into the lock. With a click, the safe unlocked. The heavy door creaked open, and I held my breath as I peered inside. My eyes widened in shock. The safe was filled with valuable watches, each carefully stored and perfectly preserved. Dad had always loved watches, but I never realized how large his collection was. The sight left me both amazed and grateful. It felt like a piece of him had been waiting here for me all along. Realizing the importance of what I had found, I carefully closed the safe again and decided to tell Mom. Later, with my husband's help, we transported the safe back to our house. As we carried it, my thoughts swirled. The watches were clearly valuable and were now part of my inheritance, but I couldn't help worrying they might also bring legal or financial complications. Determined to do everything properly, I contacted the lawyer we had met with before. He listened carefully and then advised me to speak with a certified public accountant, CPA, to understand any tax issues that might come with the collection. Taking his advice, I reached out to a CPA a friend had recommended. The accountant was thorough and patient. He walked me through the process, helped me with all the paperwork, and made sure everything was handled correctly. Slowly, things began to settle down. About a year passed, and I had grown used to the responsibilities that came with what Dad left me. Life was beginning to feel steady again, until one afternoon when Linda showed up at my door unexpectedly. Her visit caught me off guard. Given how strained our relationship had been since the inheritance dispute, the sight of her standing there felt strange. She smiled casually and said, "I was just in the area." But something in her restless movements, the way her eyes darted around, told me otherwise. We lived 37 minutes apart, so her excuse didn't quite make sense. Despite my suspicions, I stepped aside and let her in. I invited Linda inside and offered her a cup of coffee. She sat down but looked uneasy, her eyes darting around the room. Then, without warning, she blurted out, "Did you win the lottery or something?" Her question caught me completely off guard. "What are you talking about?" I asked, genuinely confused. I hadn't played the lottery, and it wasn't the season for my husband's yearly bonus. "What are you getting at?" I pressed, trying to make sense of her strange mood. Her expression shifted quickly from nervousness to irritation. "Are you making fun of me?" she snapped. I was even more puzzled. Her questions seemed to come from nowhere, and I couldn't figure out what she was hinting at. Finally, after a tense pause, she revealed the real reason behind her curiosity. She explained that she had recently run into our aunt while in the city. During their conversation, our aunt had mentioned receiving a $5,000 gift card from me as a thank you for visiting Dad during his illness. Linda's eyes narrowed. "You've come into some money, haven't you? Just admit it," she pressed, her tone sharp and accusing. I let out a long sigh as realization hit me. Now I understood where her assumptions were coming from. It wasn't anything extravagant, I explained gently. I just wanted to show my appreciation. But Linda wasn't satisfied. "Where did you get the money for that kind of gift?" she demanded. I hesitated for a moment, then finally decided it was time to tell her the truth. "It came from Dad's inheritance," I admitted. I told her about the dusty old shed she had dismissed so quickly, and how inside I had discovered a safe filled with Dad's carefully kept watch collection. Her eyes widened as I described the watches, each one valuable, preserved, and clearly important to Dad. "They weren't just things," I said softly. "Watches were Dad's passion. They're not only valuable, they hold deep sentimental meaning too." Linda leaned forward, her interest stronger than ever, though I knew her focus wasn't on the memories. They were on the money. "What about taxes?" she asked, her voice sharp with suspicion. "That's already being handled," I replied calmly. I told her how Mom had advised me to deal with everything openly, and how I had worked with a CPA to ensure all the paperwork was correct and nothing was hidden. Secrets have a way of coming out eventually, Mom had told me, and I took her words seriously. Linda didn't argue much after that. She seemed to realize there wasn't much more she could say. For me, This whole journey wasn't really about the money or even the watches. It was about uncovering another side of Dad, his love for surprises, his passions, and the thoughtful ways he tried to stay connected with us even after he was gone. As Linda left that day, I felt a quiet peace settle over me. I couldn't help but feel a sense of closure. My father's legacy wasn't about money or possessions. It was about the memories he left behind and the lessons he taught us about family, honesty, and appreciating life's little joys. When I first spoke with a certified public accountant or CPA about the watches I had inherited, I learned they could help manage the valuation and the taxes. After a careful review, we discovered something shocking. The collection was worth nearly $500,000. The number left me stunned. I never imagined the watches had such value. But this also meant something unavoidable. Inheritance tax would be due. The CPA's advice was clear and simple. Keep the watches that held sentimental value and sell the others to collectors who would truly appreciate them. It made sense both financially and emotionally. This way, I could preserve the pieces tied to my father's memory while still handling the practical side of things. From the sale of some of the watches, I was able to cover the taxes. I even found a way to thank relatives who had stood by us during Dad's illness. I sent them heartfelt thank you cards, and for some, I included gift cards as a small token of appreciation. My gesture was meant with love, but it had unexpected consequences. It was this act that sparked Linda's curiosity and led to everything that followed. Among the pieces I chose to keep, one stood out above all the rest: Dad's pocket watch. It wasn't the most expensive, but it carried more meaning than any of the others. Dad often kept it in his vest pocket, and I could still picture him checking the time with that gentle smile of his. Holding the watch brought me comfort and made me feel close to him again. I shared the story of the pocket watch with Linda, hoping she might understand why it was so important to me. But her reaction was lukewarm at best. She showed little interest in the memories or the sentimental value. Instead, she asked questions about what I had sold, how much it had gone for, and what was left in the safe. Her eyes lit up more at the mention of the safe than at the pocket watch. When I explained that the safe was now stored at Mom's house and that it had once been connected to Dad's old business, Linda grew quiet. Her thoughtful silence unsettled me. I couldn't read what was going on in her mind. To my relief, she didn't press further and eventually left. But even after she was gone, I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that lingered. Later that night, my fears were confirmed. A sudden, panicked phone call from my mom jolted me and my husband awake. Her trembling voice urged us to hurry to her house. Something was terribly wrong. We rushed out the door, hearts racing, and when we arrived, the sight before us sent chills down my spine. Flashing red and blue lights filled the street. Police cars lined the driveway. A small crowd had gathered, whispering nervously, their voices mixing with the hum of the night. Pushing through the group, I felt my stomach twist. I found my mother standing outside, visibly shaken. Her hands trembled as she explained what had happened. While preparing for bed, she had heard strange noises coming from inside the house. It sounded like someone was rummaging through her belongings. Terrified, and with no one else home to help, she climbed out of a window to escape. From her hiding place outside, Mom saw the eerie glow of a flashlight moving through the house. The sight confirmed her worst fears. An intruder was inside. Panicked, she ran to the neighbor's house, and together they called the police. When the authorities arrived, the truth was shocking. The intruder wasn't a stranger at all. It was Linda. She had broken into the house after hearing me mention the safe earlier that day. Her reckless decision caused immense distress for Mom, who had been completely terrified, and for the neighbors, who had no idea what was happening. Caught off guard by the police, Linda panicked and tried to run. But in her rush to escape, she collided with the very safe she had been searching for. The heavy metal box toppled over and pinned her to the floor. Her scream of pain echoed through the house, drawing everyone's attention. Paramedics were called, and Linda was rushed to the hospital with a serious leg injury. Mom and I were left in disbelief. We apologized to the police for the chaos, but the night was far from over. Later, when I called Linda's husband to tell him what had happened, I learned a shocking truth. Linda had been hiding a large amount of debt. Her love of luxury items and constant overspending had spiraled out of control. Her husband explained that they had been arguing recently after he discovered how badly she had mismanaged their finances. She had already spent her entire inheritance trying to cover some of her debt. That night, after another argument, she stormed out of the house. She had first gone to Mom, demanding money. When Mom refused, Linda decided to take matters into her own hands and break in to find the safe. Her husband's voice grew heavy as he told me the rest. At the hospital, after hearing about Linda's break-in and reckless behavior, he confronted her directly. He told her he had made his decision. He was filing for divorce. Linda, still in shock and lying in the hospital bed, shook her head fiercely. "I'm not getting a divorce." "Absolutely not," she insisted. But her husband's face was set, his voice steady. He was firm in his choice, no matter how loudly she protested. He handed her the divorce papers, each page clearly showing the truth of their broken relationship. With no other choice, Linda reluctantly signed them. Her face was a mix of shock, sadness, and resignation. Now confined to her hospital bed, she seemed to finally be reflecting on her situation. I noticed her flipping through a part-time job magazine, as if she had begun to realize it was time to take responsibility for her actions. The events had been painful for everyone, but this small step gave me a glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, Linda was ready to turn her life around. As for me, the chaos of the past year forced me to think deeply about my own life and what truly mattered. After many long talks with my husband, I made a big decision. I would move back into my childhood home. My first reason was to be close to Mom, to make sure she felt safe and supported after everything that had happened. But there was also a happier reason for the move, one that filled me with quiet joy. I had discovered that I was expecting a baby. The thought of bringing new life into the world, of raising a child surrounded by family, gave me hope and strength. My husband and I agreed that living with Mom would give us the support we needed as we stepped into this new chapter of our lives. Though I could not share the good news with Dad, I found comfort in believing that he would have been overjoyed. I pictured him holding my baby, his smile warm and proud, just as it had been on my wedding day. That image alone gave me peace. As I look ahead, I feel a mix of hope and calm. Life has tested me with grief, loss, and family struggles, but it has also given me the chance to start again. The thought of welcoming my child into a world where love and memories of Dad surround us makes me believe brighter days are coming. In the end, Dad's true legacy wasn't money, land, or possessions. It was love, resilience, and the reminder that even in hard times, joy can still find its way back to us.